Oklahoma Sooners snubbed in the ESPN Top 100.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Jay, we got the ESPN Top 100 players from the 2024 season, and there was just one Oklahoma Sooner on the list. That was one Danny Stutsman, who did come in the top 60. He was listed at number 54 in the ESPN Top 100.
Kind of expected that too. I mean, Danny Stutsman was one of the top dudes in the country, one of the top tacklers, one of the top in the SEC. He did everything he was supposed to do, leading Oklahoma to a much better defensive prowess than he had a few years before. And so we expected Danny Stutsman to be there. I think the as you mentioned, the snubs is the thing that kind of got a little bit under my skin, that nobody else from Oklahoma got any recognition. Not even R. Mason Thomas, who finished with 9 sacks last season. You would have thought, of all people, he'd been one. Heck, he had even returned a fumble for a touchdown to go along with his 9 sacks. Kip Lewis, 2 pick sixes. You would have thought he would have got a little bit of nope. They only looked at Danny Stutsman. Technically, we've got 2 Sooners on there, but most importantly, the one in a Sooner jersey for 2024, only one player got recognized.
Yeah, from the R. Mason Thomas perspective, I think this is kind of like what you see in the NFL, where a guy has a breakout season, doesn't really get much recognition for it, but then that next year when he replicates it, he gets all kinds of recognition. I mean, R. Mason Thomas was, to me, one of the best 50 players in the country. We saw him come through in big moments in Alabama, the Alabama win, big moments at the end of the Tulane game. He was just flying around and creating havoc off the edge. I expect when he has another productive season like he did this year, that he's going to get a lot of love next year, that he's going to be getting the Kyle Kennard treatment, the Dylan Stewart treatment. People are going to be looking at R. Mason Thomas as a top 40 pick in the 2026 NFL draft. He's that dynamic of an edge rusher. Danny Stutsman, I mean, again, the expectation is there. The fact that he is the only Sooner, if you're going to pick one Sooner, he'd be the one to pick, because nobody has been more important and more instrumental in Oklahoma's defensive turnaround than Danny Stutsman. 3 straight 100 tackle seasons, a guy that just does everything for your defense. He's the leader on and off the field. He's been the face of the program for the last couple of years, and he's going to have some big shoes to fill. Kobe McKenzie is going to have a big task ahead of him to take on Danny Stutsman's role. He's not going to be the same kind of player, not going to be the same kind of leader, and that's okay. Kobe McKenzie, a blue chip prospect in his own right, he's got a lot of talent, but those are some big shoes to fill. I also thought it was notable that, hey, Billy Bowman didn't make it. I thought that was curious as well, because he was a dude that had a big 2023 with the 6 interceptions, the 3 pick sixes. You'd think that people would have had that name in the back of their minds just a little bit more over at ESPN, and maybe put him in the bottom 10 of the top 100 and just kind of sneak him in there, because listen, he may not have had as productive of a season in 2024, but he's still somebody that teams had to be aware of. And I guarantee offensive coordinators were going into the game plan thinking, we don't want to try Billy Bowman too often.
No, not at all. Billy Bowman was a name that we know that NFL scouts are looking at heavily as well. As you mentioned, he's one player that, teams try to watch out for, especially because, he had 3 pick sixes returned for a touchdown last season. So this year you did see a lot of people trying to make sure they kept an eye on his location. I am kind of surprised that he didn't make it at the bottom of the list, just because I'm still just baffled, as we talked about with R. Mason as well as Kip. Kip does have some large shoes to fill, him and Kobe McKenzie, especially with Kobe McKenzie rocking the green dot this coming season. He'll be the one that's going to be calling the defense. It's going to be his job to be the one to orchestrate things and manage it. And so if Kobe can go in there and do what he needs to do, there's a good chance that, the defense should be able to keep itself at that tier that it was with Stutsman. Man, yeah, there are some big shoes to fill From him, I think Robert Spears Jennings, he was one of the highest graded safeties in college football. I kind of would have figured his name would have populated, or, you know, a little bit of respect for him would have shown up, but that didn't even show up either. So I'm kind of surprised with some of this, but at the same time, I get it. They want people to prove themselves. They want us to prove ourselves like we always do. But I definitely didn't expect anybody on offense to be on there. That's actually the only spot I did not expect to see a soul on there for this season. But next year, I can expect some of us being there in preparation for previews.
Well, and when you go 6-7, Jay, it's hard to argue that you should have more guys in the top 100.
Right.
I mean, you are what your record says you are, and Oklahoma was not a good team in 2024. So there's no reason to expect to have a litter of players on the top 100. On the offensive side of the ball, there's nobody, in my opinion, that would have been worthy of a top 100 selection.
Yeah, not yet.
You know, had Javonte Barnes had a season like he had the last, 3-4 games before he got hurt, and extrapolate that over the whole season, maybe you can make an argument.
Maybe.
But the run game was so slow to get going that even that, you can't put anybody on the offense in the top 100. But you look at John Mateer. John Mateer comes in at number 38 in the ESPN top 100 from his time over at Washington State, getting a lot of love and a lot of respect. So that's a positive sign that people think really, really highly of John Mateer. And coming to Oklahoma, we've talked about it ad nauseum that this dude's going to have a chance to go put some big numbers up on the board with Ben Arbuckle as his offensive coordinator. If they can just figure out the offensive coordinator or the offensive pieces at wide receiver and offensive line, he's going to have a chance to have some big time days for the Sooners next season.
Right. That's the critical part. You've got to make sure that he can keep the party going like he did when he was at Washington State, especially having the same offensive coordinator. So, I mean, the expectations are still extremely high for John Mateer. And I believe that he walks in with I think he has a high enough ceiling, but I think he comes in with a very high floor. And I think that that's probably way more important of a component for what we need in order for this team to be successful. I've given the comparison to Jalen Hurts. If he can get you close to Jalen Hurts' numbers, you're good. It's exactly what we need, especially with the complementary football that we hope to play. We want to make sure that we have a top 10 defense. And if things line up the way it sounds like over the next few days, should show that we're going to have a top 10 defense. And so, yeah, Mateer making it, he was 38th on that list. So, hey, they got respect for the man. They recognize the fact that he did account for 3,900 yards and 44 touchdowns. I'm going to keep reminding y'all of that because that's a big deal. Not too many other people put up the numbers he did last year. Like, that's a lot to account for by yourself, roughly. Throwing for 31, rushing for over 800 in this offense with the weapons he's going to have around him. And I know that we'll have an improved offensive line. He could probably put up those numbers, if not more. He could probably go for over 4,000 combined yards. And if he really gives it to you, gets you over 40 touchdowns, whoo, it's going to be a massive year for the Sooners. So I'm glad to see that he did get recognized for his contributions at Washington State. Now the question is will he get some love for actually coming to Oklahoma?
If you're looking at a guy on the team for 2025 that's not on this list, that you expect to be on the list next year, who's that going to be?
Not on the list, but I expect to see on the list next year, Deion Burks. Mm-hmm. He should be on that list next year. There's no excuse, besides, constantly staying injured, but I expect him to actually be on there.
Yeah, I think if he's healthy, he's going to have a big year. I say he's going to have a big year.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, if he can stay healthy, I think he'll just put out. I mean, we know R. Mason Thomas, I think, is going to land on that list next year. I'm going to throw another sneaky one, Jaden Jackson. I mean, he got a lot of love as a ESPN freshman All-American from the Football Writers Association of America. So if he can replicate that next year, ESPN is going to try to fit him in there somewhere. If he can double his sack total, go from 2 to 4, get that tackle for loss total up closer to 10, then I think he's going to have a chance to be an ESPN top 100 player next year. Because we know he's already one of the best in the country. Agreed. What did the top 10 quarterbacks for 2025 look like? We got some lists. I don't know about all that. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace is the leading virtual therapy provider. It makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours. And it's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans. And for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter promo code SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapy today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, promo code SPACE80. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Coming up in the third segment, we're going to talk Oklahoma win totals for 2025. Really interesting number we'll discuss and dive into. Tell you if you're going to hammer the over, hammer the under. We'll give you our thoughts on that. But Jay, we got some top 10 quarterback lists that came out on Wednesday, and they're interesting to say the least.
Yeah, very interesting. First, you had Mr. Crawford over there at 247. He put out his top 10 quarterbacks, and John, I'm just gonna say I'm okay. I guess I get where he's going from. I mean Brad, he decided. I'll name them out, right? Top 10, number 1's K Klubnik, number 2 Garrett Nussmeier, 3 Arch Manning, 4 Sam Levitt, 5 is Carson Beck, 6 Lenore Sellers, 7 Fernando Mendoza, 8 Drew Aller, 9 Diego Pavia, and number 10 is Jackson Arnold.
JFA.
That was an interesting one to me to see, of all people, that's the one they added without, not knowing if he's, what he's going to look like in that system. And then you added another one here from, our partners at FanDuel. They decided to drop their way too early list as well at quarterback. And it's similar to the one you saw from Brad Crawford over there at CBS. But you had Nussmeier, you had Arch Manning, but you had DJ Lagway in there with Aller, Nico Yamaleava, Lenore Sellers, K Klubnik, Carson Beck, Dylan Raiola, as well as Caden Salters, which is over at Colorado. Now, I understand the Salter hype. He rushed for 1,000 yards, threw for almost 3,000 at Liberty one year, the year they went undefeated and got blown out by Oregon in the bowl game. The kid's got talent, but I don't understand at all, John, how John Mateer is not even considered in any of these lists.
It's wild to me too, because if you're going to go and make a top 10 quarterback list and you're going to include a guy like Jackson Arnold, I mean, no disrespect to Jackson Arnold, but you had a terrible season. There's no reason to think that you're a top 10 quarterback in college football right now. Could you be a top 10 quarterback in college football when all is said and done in 2025? Absolutely. I still think he's got the talent to go and do big things for Auburn, but he hasn't shown it yet at the collegiate level consistently. So why are you going to put him in there in the top 10? And then I get the Caden Salter hype, but I think the hype is more because he's replacing Shedeur, and everybody saw what Shedeur was able to do in Colorado's offense.
Yeah.
Is he going to be able to replicate that? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he's a couple years removed from that big season from Liberty. So yeah. I don't think that there's any guarantees there. Otherwise, I don't really have much issue with either of these lists. I expected to see Nussmeier and Arch Manning within the top 2 or 3, and they are on both lists. Sam Leavitt, I can't pronounce his name.
It's saying Levitt? Yeah.
Levitt, thank you. I always watch games on mute because the kids, but so anyway.
Understood.
Yeah, that one, I like that inclusion. I think he's a gamer. He's one of those dudes. That, okay, he may not have the big time NFL tools that you're looking for, but like a Diego Pavia that comes in at number 9 on Brad Crawford's list, they're just dudes that they just have those intangibles that help you win football games. Fernando Mendoza, that's interesting. In the Indiana offense, I think he has a chance to put up some numbers. But again, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, Lenora Sellers, all expect to see those names. I'm high on Tennessee because of Nico returning, obviously for 2025 and being able to build on what he did in 2024. He had some good moments, some bad moments. He'll get better. It was just his first year as a starter in Josh Heupel's system. So, and then the DJ Lagway piece, that's going to be the one that's the most intriguing. If Florida is going to have any chance of making a college football playoff run next year, it's going to be on the arm of DJ Lagway. If he can show a lot of the good that he showed this year and not so much of the bad and be consistent next year, because they're going to have a tough schedule again, because the SEC is staying, it's going to flip. It was tough this year. It's going to be tough next year. Yep. If he can rise to the occasion, they're going to be a problem for some teams. They finished really, really strong. I got no real problem with this other than, the Jackson Arnold hype. And again, I was conducting the Jackson Arnold hype train this time a year ago. I've learned some lessons here, which is why I'm maybe asking people to not have such high expectations for Arch going into 2025, because it's a first-time starter. If he doesn't make the playoff, maybe even if Texas doesn't win the national title, people are going to look at it like a disappointment.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, the good thing for him, even talking about him last episode for Arch is, this is his, third season going into the system. So he's been around and he understands what Steve Sarkisian wants to do. The problem you run into is that, the biggest problem you run into is, all the changes they're going to have to make in preparation for him. Now, they've got guys that are on the roster that's been around enough, especially on the offensive line. They just bring up younger guys. But still, until we see him play, I don't see it. The Jackson Arnold piece is still kind of weird to me with him being there at Auburn. We just saw the Peyton Thorne situation. He threw for 3,000 yards at Michigan State and couldn't replicate that at Auburn for some very weird reason. That tells me enough about the whole situation there that I should expect. Diego Pavia, though, he definitely deserves some respect to be on this list, and I definitely appreciate that's what Brad decided to add. I don't know about this other one, though, with Dylan Raiola. I mean, are we really already hyped up on that? I think he's a solid quarterback. I need him to prove it to me. It's going to take some work for him to prove that to me, but I don't see why we need to have Dylan Raiola up there this early. I mean, give me another full year. Give me some big numbers. And also, one more, Drew Aller. I mean, no offense, but his wide receivers didn't catch a single pass in the playoff in that last game, right? Did they just have a whole bunch of dudes transfer out mainly because of that? Like, I don't get the Drew Aller love either.
He's a returning quarterback from an offense that was pretty good in 2024. And this is where I come to. It's the quarterback position in 2025 outside of the top 3 or 4 is kind of cooked, man. Like, it's not great. Like, this is kind of a down year for quarterbacks this next year after what we saw the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not excited about really any of them. Like, when I'm sitting here saying Garrett Nussmeier is, to me, the front runner for the Heisman, the dude's good, but is he this big time generational talent that can't miss prospect? No, I don't think so. It's going to be a weird year for quarterbacks. Hopefully these guys got their run games going and the offensive lines are working, because I don't see anybody on this list that is like a no doubter can lead his team to a national title.
Yeah, I don't see a single player that has that capability. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier is going to have a good year again. I expect Cade Klubnik to have another one. I mean, this will be his 3rd year really running the system. So the expectation is he should show up. But yeah, that's it.
But we've seen so many roller coasters out of all these guys. And maybe that's why Arch is getting so much love, because we haven't seen the roller coaster ride of the Arch Manning experience. And maybe there won't be. Maybe it'll just be a rocket ship strapped to his back and he'll just take off like you're playing college football 25 and controlling the guy. Everybody else, they've had some big ups, some big downs, and it's going to be anybody's guess where this all ends up, who ends up in New York. It could be another year where we see a non-quarterback win the Heisman. next year because of the quarterback situation that we're looking at right now. There's no definitive guy that's like, he's the number one guy. To me, it's going to be a crapshoot, and we're going to be following this all season to see, okay, this guy's the number one quarterback. No, this guy's the number one quarterback. This guy's the number one quarterback. And everybody's going to be guessing and just, trying to pull names out of a hat to see who's going to be ending up in the Heisman ceremony in New York after the 2025 season. We got some win totals. Let's discuss those win totals coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch a playoff win live. It's a memory I'll never forget. But this year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters most, which is being there. So, like, for example, talking about some NBA action, we got the Oklahoma City Thunder playing some ball soon against the Dallas Mavericks. And when I click on that dial and find a super deal that was incredible value for amazing seats, and I could even preview the view from my spot before I even bought it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts for free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. We got win totals dropped on Wednesday, and the Oklahoma Sooners are looking at a win total of 7.5. We've seen in several different sports books. Jay, what do you think of that number?
That sounds about fair. Kind of what a lot of people expected for us to have the similar number as last year. The big question with Oklahoma still is what's going to happen on the offensive line? What is the quarterback play going to be? What's the wide receiver going to play? Heck, what's up with the offense? And so I thought that was a very fair number when I saw it starting to float around. I don't anticipate that number staying there for very long. I actually expect Vegas to shoot that number up a lot higher. So as much as I would like to say that, Oklahoma's being done dirty. Nah, these are just preliminaries. Like most of the big books still haven't dropped theirs because they're still trying to evaluate what the returning production and stuff is going to look like. So to me, probably around spring ball is when we'll have a really good understanding what that number is going to be. And man, if I can find this 7 somewhere when I'm out in Vegas in March, I'm definitely going over.
The thing I think that's going to have some people somewhat skeptical about Oklahoma's chances to hit the over at 7 or 7.5 in 2025 is that schedule. Fair. The schedule is tough. I mean, just like we talked about with Florida, the schedule is tough again for Oklahoma. You still have Michigan, you got Texas, you've got South Carolina, and you go to South Carolina this time, so you get to go be a part of Sandstorm. You go to Alabama this time. You go to Tennessee. You've got Texas. You've got Ole Miss coming to your building. You've got Auburn coming to your building. LSU coming to your building. The schedule is going to be tough. And unless Oklahoma is able to make significant strides on offense and show that in the first 4 or 5 games of the season, it's going to be hard to expect them to win 8 or 9 games. Now, that's my expectation, that they win 9 games next year, be pushing for a playoff spot. But will they is going to be the question. I mean, can they figure out the offensive line situation enough that John Mateer is going to have enough time to throw and enough space to run, and that they can get a complementary run game going in addition to what John Mateer is able to provide? I think sitting at 7 is probably about right, because I think that's where the question lies, right? They were a 6-win team in the regular season this year, and they had a few games that could have gone either way. The Ole Miss game looked promising until you got to the fourth quarter. The Tennessee game, you don't fumble the ball at the 5-yard line, and who knows what that game looks like. You got the big win over Alabama. The Missouri game, you gave away the Missouri game. So I can totally see getting over that 7 and that 7.5. But as I'm going to repeat, till I'm blue in the face and you're sick of hearing it, I got to see him do it. I got to see him prove it until I can just be really sure that they're going to go and win 9 games. You go beat Michigan at home and you do it with a resounding offensive performance, I'll feel a lot more confident about where this team is headed. You beat Auburn in your building again, I'll feel really good about where this team is headed. Shoot, you go beat Texas, then you'll have me bought in on them hitting that over. But right now, it's just like, I got to see them do it. And I got to see the pieces that they brought together that, hey, I understand why people have some questions about the pieces that they brought in on the offensive side of the ball, aside from John Mateer.
Yeah, there's a few components that you got to see, just like I said, come together. If we see them gel, I think we'll be fine. I think the other interesting numbers on here, 10.5 was for Georgia and Texas. Look, I mean, I'm trying to be a hater here, while at the same time trying to understand. Are people really sold on Georgia and Gunnar Stockton right now? Like, it's nothing against him. I'm just curious, are we truly sold on him so far? That Tennessee at 9.5, kind of sketchy. But Bama and Ole Miss both at 9, though. Didn't both of them lose their quarterbacks, and they're kind of revamping a lot of stuff? Now, Ole Miss has lived in the portal for the 3rd straight year, and being in the portal for the 3rd straight year has yet to really, pay dividends that we would expect it, but they're still getting 9-win seasons, 10-win seasons. I can totally understand the 9 there, but what body of work has told us that with any of these teams that they should be at their number? I think LSU's probably the only one I expect to be 8.5. I expect them to be up because, they're returning that quarterback for this is 5th year. So this is 5 years for him at quarterback there. And I was on our squad show talking about this, John, and I got a little bit of attacked. And let me explain to you what I said. Said Garrett Nussmeier, everybody sold on him, threw 4,000 yards last season. Cool. I don't know if he's a world beater yet. And I only said that because he's been there 4 years. This is his first time starting. And the transfers that come in and took in his job numerous times. Jaden Daniels got it. Granted, Jaden Daniels ended up winning a Heisman, but Nussmeier was there with him. He did grow and he evolved. He got better. Michael Van Buren is also transferred there. Is there a chance that Van Buren may, try to push him out the way? I don't know. Not saying he will. Just saying. I have questions about Van Buren going there when he has so many other places he could have went and been a starter. Heck, he could have stayed Mississippi State and been a starter. We'll just have to see. But if anything, John, I'm curious. 10.5, 9.5? A little sketchy for Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee?
Yeah, the Georgia-Texas thing, I would not feel incredibly comfortable putting them at 10 or at 11 wins. So these are regular season win totals. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me to hit the over, Georgia and Texas got to go 11-1. Texas could, because their schedule is soft. Again,
Ohio State to start, though.
They got Ohio State, but then after that, but again, it's not going to be the same Ohio State team, right?
Fair. It could be another $20 million team.
Texas is getting the benefit of playing the quote unquote defending national champion for the second year in a row. That is going to be a shell of the team that actually went and won the national championship.
Don't you love it?
But everybody's going to watch Texas go into that game. Texas Longhorns against the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. That's going to be the buildup all offseason. And if they win that game, it's going to be Texas beats the defending national champion, albeit they don't have a lot of the guys on that team that made them the national champion. So Texas could go 11-1 because of their schedule. Georgia, we'll see. But they'll play each other, and that will have a big impact on which of those teams hits that 11 win. If you're buying the over, which I would not, I just don't know if either of those teams can hit 11 wins next year. Tennessee, I think, has a chance to get the 10 just because, again, I believe in Josh Heupel, and I think Nico is a good quarterback. And then Alabama at 9, to me, that's an under. I just don't know. You underachieved with Jalen Milroe as your quarterback, and now you're going to a first-year starter at quarterback. I like Kalen DeBoer, but are they going to be better than what they were last year? I don't know. I don't think so.
So many questions. I've got so many questions. I got so many questions on both.
I talked about college football just kind of being really wide open for 2025, the SEC might be pretty wide open for 2025 too. I'm not going to sit here and predict that Oklahoma goes on a run and wins the conference, but you look at what everybody is losing. Why not? Why not OU? And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube, where he's covering all of college football over there. Follow me at John 9 Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. Follow the show on social media at Locked On Sooners, wherever you like to ply your social media craft. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Sooner. 10.5.